Welcome to 30 Minutes of Wisdom, Rising in Consciousness and Mindfulness. My name is Veronica Carrera. I'm your host and creator of the show. Let me introduce you to my wonderful co-host. We have Paola Castro, Lynn, Min, and we have Lincoln Parker. As a matter of fact, I just came from Costa Rica, Guanacaste, Costa Rica, from a meditation and spiritual retreat for a week. And I saw Paola and Lynn and I were together. So we just came back. It's wonderful to be back. And thank you, Lincoln, for being here, also co-hosting with us today. And we're going to have a powerful discussion today. And it's a topic that is so close to my heart. Connecting to your inner self. And let me start by reading a quote. The most important kind of freedom is to be who you really are. Sometimes you trade in your reality for a role. You trade in your senses for an act. You give up your ability to feel. In exchange, you put on a mask. There can't be any large-scale transformation until there is a personal transformation on an individual level. So it has to happen from the inside first. This is a quote by Jim Morrison. So let me go ahead and start by asking my lovely co-host, and let me start with Paola. Paola, we hear a lot about connecting to our inner self. What does that mean exactly?
To me, what it means to connect with the inner self is to connect with that aspect of self that is eternal. Now, without getting religious or too spiritual, we can all relate with that feeling that we have inside of ourselves, with that energy that has been with us all along since we were little kids. That aspect of self that even though you age and your body changes and your marital status may change, it doesn't matter what's going on in your life. There's something within you. And Wayne Dyer used to call it, there is a song that is always playing within you. And the external things might change, but that part remains. It's permanent. It's not impermanent. So when we're connecting to the inner self, we're connecting to our emotions, we're connecting to the body. We are transcending the mind, the logical mind and the voices in the mind, and going more into our hearts. When I teach, I like to tell people, point at yourself right now and say, this is me. And so when people do it and they say, this is me, they always point at the heart. And after people do it, I always say, isn't it interesting, you guys, that nobody said this is me? So we all know that we are more than our mind, that we are this eternal being. And when we refer to ourselves, even though we don't understand it, we intrinsically point at the heart. So that's what it means to me, is to connect to that eternal aspect of self that doesn't change no matter how old you are, no matter what has happened in your life. It seems like it's that music that keeps playing. And another way of seeing it is connecting to the heart, to that part of you that goes beyond the logic, to the senses. I don't know if that answers the question better.
No, absolutely. So I love that quote. There is a song within you that is constantly singing. And then you talked about connecting to the heart. Some people might have different ideas of what that means.
Yeah.
What does that mean to connect to the heart? I know that I was a whole week in Costa Rica just now. And I went to another level of what is connecting to myself, to that higher self. But I would love to hear from you and from the others. What does that mean to you?
Well, to me, connecting to my heart, well, first of all, is we have to choose it. It's at the beginning stages of connecting to our hearts, we have to use the power of choice, meaning you bring your attention all of your attention to your heart, just like you can pay attention to your right toe right now, your left knee, with your awareness. We want to bring our attention, and my teacher calls it, because we have dominion over our attention, we can do that. So there's a law, a metaphysical law that says where attention goes, energy flows. So whenever we get into the heart, and a good way to get into our heart is by breathing, also by getting in the body, by getting in nature. There are different activities we can do to kind of get out of our heads into our hearts. And then once the attention is there and the energy is flowing there, you start connecting to that inner world where there's emotions and there are sensations. And when you're connecting with that aspect, or at least to me, because that's the best experience I can give you, my own experience, you tap into a wisdom and a knowing that you may not have words to explain what you know, but you know. It's that intuitive aspect of self. And there's many research that has seen that there are neurons in your heart. There are neurons just like you have in your brain. There are neurons in your heart that that connect you to your inner world. So yes, it's bringing the attention there. And again, exercising, getting into nature is a good way to bringing the attention from up here to up here, to down here, I'm sorry.
Beautiful, Paola. Fantastic.
For me personally, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Yes, it's not so much about connecting to the heart, but disconnecting from all of the things that act as a barrier for that connection to the heart. There are so many external factors that we allow to get in the way of us doing what is in essentially our best interest. When we are connected to the heart, we are acting in our best interest at all times. And I really was so excited about having this discussion about connecting to the inner self this week, because, and I'd like to get some of the audience members' comments and their questions about the subject matter today. But specifically, at this time of year, we just finished Thanksgiving and we've got Christmas and we've got the New Year holiday coming up. A lot of people are feeling very lonely right now. They're feeling lonely, they're feeling disconnected and detached. And this is because many of us do not have what is most commonly depicted in our commercials, in our television shows, in our movies related to the holiday season as the ideal family life. And because people are looking at that, constantly focused on that because it's everywhere that you look, they start to feel as though they are not worthy, and they question themselves, and this even further disconnects them from their inner self. So what do we do about this? First and foremost, we've got to stop focusing on all of these external things that cause us to feel like we're disconnected from our inner self, that cause us to vibrate on a low frequency of energy. And once we do that, what happens, what we can then do is we can then start to bring ourselves into the awareness of what it is that we want. Because we know that seeing these things causes us to feel as though we don't have them. So now we have to reinforce the concept that yes, we can have them. And what we do then is we give those things, because life cannot do anything for us that it cannot do through us. So we have to become a channel for the love that we're seeing expressed in all of these things that remind us that we don't have them in our lives. And we have to become a channel for them. We have to give them. A lot of people feel as though, okay, I'm giving these things, but it's not being reciprocated to me. I'm not getting it back. And that's because we've been given the conditions. We've been in a state of lack for so long that when we put the energy out, it has conditions on it because we're afraid that we're not going to get it back. So you've got to be able to give it freely. If anything's attached to it, if any conditions are attached to it, if any expectations are attached to it, then it's contaminated. In order for us to get back the things that we want, the way that we want them, which is with unconditional love, the love that we give has to be pure.
Lincoln, I thank you for that, because you mentioned about the expectations, and Paola and Ling, I talked about this a lot. It's not about expectations, it's about intentions and what's blocking us from that love. And we also mentioned about the science behind it and what happens to the neurons in our brain, in our heart, when we are in the state of lack and state of loneliness and not connected to ourselves. So I want to pass the time over to Lynn. I think this is a good time for you to share some of your insights.
Oh, there's so many insights already spoken. I just feel like I was taking notes and just kind of being. I think for me, part of connecting with the inner self is, as Paola said, paying attention to the feelings. You know, when people say, you know, connect with the intuition, what does that even mean? And how do you even do that? If not for feelings, what do you get? Like lightning bolts out of the sky, you know, when you want to connect with the divine, or like feelings are like where the seeds of intuition and our messaging is coming from with our inner self, right? There's a whole lot of inner self. There's like the child self, who's always kind of like tender and maybe needy, and that's why it's hard to accept, right? And we have feelings for our inner pieces. Maybe there's like the really, I don't know if I can say this on live, but like the really mean, nasty, you know, I have a word for that, you know, but the mean self, the mean girl self, or you're like, oh, why do I do that? But at the end of the day, I think the way it surfaces up for a lot of the people that I work with is they end up going, I don't get myself. Like, why do I do this? Like, what's wrong with me? Right? What's wrong with me that I feel one way, but I can't do this? Or like, oh, I have the perfect life, but I feel miserable, or I feel guilty for feeling this way, or not feeling happy, or and there's a lot of different messages that we're getting, and the call to listen to our inner self is to align all of that. And the work is to get out of your mind and really sink into your heart first, to feel your way into the healing. What is revealed is only to heal, right? In Rhythmia, there was a good saying, right? What is coming is going, right? And I think also to have compassion for that part of you that's like resistance to the feeling. It's hard. I got a meeting in 12 minutes. I can't sit here feeling my feelings. That is so real, especially in New York City, especially for corporate America, or people like me who's very like goal-oriented, and I don't got time for my feelings. I gotta function. And that's when I realized, okay, this is my work. I gotta get out of my head, because the head wants to do. I remember in my training, my professor said, we are human beings, not human doings. And I was so upset. I was like, that's true, but what does that mean? What do I need to do to be a human being? What can I do to be a better beer? She had no answer for me. And I'm still on that journey, right? To just kind of get out of my own way of connecting back, using my feelings. Emotions are just energy in motion, going where the energy is, paying attention to that, as Paola said, and really trying to give compassion to this what's wrong with me question, right? What's wrong with me? Well, first of all, I'm judging myself if I'm going, what's wrong with me, right? Maybe take a more curious aspect. I wonder what's going on that I feel these uncomfortable feelings. I wonder what they might be saying to me. I wonder what they might be pointing me to. And I wonder what my next move will have to be, is really kind of reconnecting yourself back to your gut. And I know Paola mentioned a little bit about this, about how, or maybe Lincoln did, but absolutely true. In our mother's wombs, before even the brain cell is made, right? The heart is made, and also the guts. So, you know, they say that the same stem cells in your brain lead all the way back to your gut. And that's why, you know, your gut is your primary brain. So when people say, I have a gut feeling, even if I can't understand it, I have a gut feeling, is such an important, like, discipline to stop, pause, and just listen to that, or just be curious about it. I wonder what that gut feeling was about. Yeah.
Everything that has been said so far has been completely wonderful. And there are two thoughts that I'm sitting with right now. And it's like emotions are just energy in motion. And the second is give compassion to what's going on. And when I have those parts of myself that are resurfacing, either the judgmental part of me, and then allow for compassion for myself, in the sense that that is another way to connect to our inner self. Is we're not perfect. And that's something that I had to truly come to terms with myself. I'm not perfect, and it's okay. It's okay not to be. And the reason why certain things are coming, you said, Lynn, is because what do you say? What's being revealed is here to be healed. Okay, what's being revealed is here to be healed. So this is exactly what I needed to hear now. But Paola, we're talking about connecting to our inner self. So then what happened? Was there a point that we got disconnected? And why does this happen?
Oh, well, I can give you two answers. And the first answer is we have never been disconnected. And that is a deep answer, because people would say, oh, no, you don't know. I am completely in my head all the time. I am very disconnected. Now, I think that is a human perception. Now, if we want to bring it more into that human perception that, yes, we disconnected. Well, all of us go through this process of disconnection or disassociation from our own emotions and feelings, because we learned at a very young age that being too in tune with what's going on here was inconvenient. That this world, you do better if you are producing, if you are successful, if you're, just in a very linear way of being. We don't have time for that. We have to work. I remember my mom saying, you only connect to your feelings if there's a really good reason. If you don't, then we don't have time for that. And of course, in her time, she didn't have time for that. They were surviving. But Maya Angelou said, survival is very important, but we're living in a time and age where we can now start practicing the elegance of thriving. So we disconnect, knowing that that's just a human perception, because we prioritize surviving. And when you're surviving, it doesn't matter if you're connected to the inner self or not. If you're in the jungle being chased by a pack of coyotes, you need to run for your life. That's it. You cannot stop and smell the roses, look at the afternoon. So it's a matter of prioritizing what's more important. Now, our ancestors, our mothers and grandparents did a lot of survival, and thank you for doing all of that. And we are entering into a new era where we want to practice the elegance of thriving. Therefore, we need to choose it. And so, like Lynn was saying and Lincoln was saying, we can do all these things. One, what is disconnecting me? What is making me feel so scared? How can I bring compassion? All of that work, people. I've coached lots of people by now. I've been coaching for 9 years. And people sometimes tell me, Paula, that's a lot of work. Like, what you're talking about just sounds like a lot. And I said, at first, it's a lot of work, because you have to choose over and over again to be compassionate over judgmental over yourself. But isn't a lot more work to be miserable all the time? Isn't that a lot more work and more painful? And usually people say, oh, yeah, well, you're right. So at the beginning, it's we have to be practicing that muscle. I call it muscle of choosing. What am I going to choose? And remember over and over again that through the truth of who you are, you can find more answers. You can connect to solutions that go beyond your logical mind. So it's a natural thing. It happens to all of us. And if I have one more minute, do I have 1 more minute just to say something?
You have plenty of time.
So there's a person, because in here where I work, it's such a beautiful place. You get very connected to the inner self. So this person tells me, I'm a bit scared that I'm going to get disconnected. And you know, because I feel so connected to myself, I don't want to disconnect again. And I said, well, look, well, first, I don't think we ever disconnect, but when we have that idea of disconnection, I always like to think about the analogy of a bird flying. So if you see a bird flying, it spans his wings and it contracts his wings. Part of flying is both movements, expanding and contracting. So expanding to me sometimes feels, oh my God, I feel so connected. And then life says, it's okay if you have a bad day. The contraction is part of life. Now, the question is how quick you expand again. Or are you so used to being disconnected that you stay contracted? Because life is both movements. It's not just one. So I don't know if it landed with him, but it was surely a good reminder to me that it's okay. We're all doing this dance of expanding and contracting, and not to get stuck in any of those, because both are perfect.
Yeah, thank you, Paola. There's another thought that, Lynn, I'm not sure you want to expand, but I thought about sharing a little bit of this other idea that at times we feel disconnected because of things that have happened in our childhood, either trauma or events that have happened in our professional life that we may feel are not enough, whatever it is that these events interpretation, that how we interpret these events in our brain, in our hearts. But when I was a child, like when I was nine, I mean, I grew up with a single mom. That's what I wanted to say, and she died when I was 9 years old. I remember that every day she used to pick me up at school, and I would try to be the first one in the line to make sure that I'm the first one to get out and run towards her and hug her. And she would always try to be the first one also outside and open her arms and with a big smile just wave for me. And then they came that one day when she never showed up, and all the kids ran to their parents. The school closed, and I sat on the sidewalk for hours waiting for her. And I was the only person, as I said, I was 9 years old, until like about, I think the school closed about 1 p.m. And about 5 p.m., someone shows up and says, your mom is dying. Who do you want to be with if she dies? I feel that a lot of my emotions in my adulthood somehow connected back to that moment, because I never processed as a child. I don't think I ever cried. And throughout my life, I thought, as long as I'm a good person, I'm a good cousin, I'm a good sister, I'm a good friend, I live a good life, that's enough. But I never really did the work to look at that part of my life. And I realized in the last couple of years that was something that I needed to look at in order to reconnect with that child and let her know that everything is going to be okay. And that has been probably one of the greatest blessings of my life, to be awakened to that and to have had the opportunity to heal that aspect of my life and connect with that. Although, Paola, you said that we never disconnect. Perhaps there are things that make us feel that we are disconnected. Mm-hmm. But Lynn, I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Vero. And I'm so glad. I think Paola landed here also, and Veronica's story landed here also. But, you know, I just wanted to make a point that the split in itself is necessary. Be kind. It is already fine. It's not just going to be fine. It is already fine. You know, Veronica, you needed to have grown up. If that 9-year-old, she just didn't have the mental and the emotional and even like the social resources to kind of take this reality that mom is gone. Okay, who do you want to live? Like, you know, she didn't have it. And so what our mind does is it for our benefit, right? To keep us surviving, it's a good thing. It splits because it kind of goes, I don't think I can deal with that anymore. But now that we're an adult, now that we're in a different place, right? We don't need the same defense mechanisms. We don't need the same distance from our wounds. We can go a little bit closer to it and see it for what it is, because we're an adult now. We now have the knowledge. Now we don't, automatically go, oh my gosh, and we don't have to flare out. Like, we can handle that now, right? So whenever you are ready to go to that place, and connect, I have plenty of people who come and say, oh, okay, and I did this thing with my dad, but I don't want to talk about it. Great. Let's not talk about it. Let's not put another layer of shame for the split itself, because that's what keeps you alive, right? And as Paula said, because now is a time to thrive. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The food and the shelter and all of the safety being really right? If we don't feel safe, we'll never transcend to the self-actualization or the self-transcendence part of the triangle. And so I think at each and every moment to remember to live with compassion and gentleness with yourself, not to go back and go, I can't believe I'm this many years old, I'm still dealing with this. There's a reason why, and let's be real. There's a reason why there's a 45-minute window and what you're going to speak about, and you're going to feel all your feelings and you're going to be okay. There's a reason why we have to shift, and compartmentalization is so real and so helpful at times. I explain sometimes that the defense mechanisms isn't bad. It's not to throw them away, but to know which one to use and which one to put down and which one to pick up. So compassion.
Very powerful. Very, very powerful. And what you said brought my mind to one of my favorite television shows of all time, Mr. Robot. And for anyone who's familiar with Mr. Robot, the lead character, Elliot, he has a very traumatic childhood experience that causes what you're talking about, Lynn, that split, where part of you is able to handle that, but part of you is not able to handle that. And the part of you that is able to handle that takes over. And so Elliot went through this, and there were two Elliots existing. And what happens is, as we grow up, and Veronica mentioned this, talking about how do we reestablish that connection? How do we come back into alignment, bring those two parts of ourselves back into alignment? We're always getting opportunities to do it. Life never gives us any more than we can handle. So if we're not ready at the point in time where one opportunity presents itself, then it just gets punted down the road to a time where we may be a little more prepared to deal with it. But the opportunities are always there for us to realign our two selves back together and come back into unity. And what it takes is for us to be at that place where Lynn has been talking about, and as well as Paola, that compassion for those experiences that cause the divide in our inner self. And once we're able to do that, it becomes a little more easy. It becomes less challenging. It becomes less difficult because we're building a muscle. So that muscle becomes stronger and we're able to deal with it a little better.
Thank you, Lincoln. So we have about a couple of minutes, and what I thought would be a good way to leave the audience with, and for those who are watching now and those who will watch later, is we talked about self-reflection, being good to ourselves in order to connect to that inner self. What else is there? How can we connect to our inner selves? What are the practices?
I would say first and foremost, to be strong enough to put out the energy that you want to receive in return. What happens, we get so caught up in not feeling as though our energy is going to be reciprocated. So we have this fear that acts as a barrier from us giving those things to the people that we want to give it to. I'm interested in hearing what the ladies have to say about this as well.
Paola or Lynn?
Well, I would say, pay attention to how you feel about your thoughts, your relationship with yourself, right? That's the split where you're judging yourself, you're critical. And the two, I would say there's multiple pieces of you, right? just pay attention to the relationship. And as Paola said, as you know, where the attention goes, the energy flows. Give some energy in working towards the relationship of how you feel about yourself. And I think it would be so revealing as to like process with that a little bit.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. And Paola, leave us with some final words in the last few seconds.
You know, the privilege of a lifetime is to know thyself. Know yourself. And if it's confusing, ask for help. Get someone to guide you through it. It's a beautiful, profound experience. And then once you start getting to know yourself, that inner self, ooh, life gets so good.
And that's a wonderful way to finish. And thank you, Lincoln. Thank you, ladies, Paola, Lynn, and thank you for the audience for joining us, for watching later. Send us some comments. We are so happy that you get this opportunity to experience this with us. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.